All right, let's do the next in InDesign. We're going to make this festival poster. Now, if you follow along with the book, this one can be kind of confusing because it's showing us a lot of different techniques. And you may not even realize, why are they teaching me this until later when you're trying to use it and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So let's get started. The files for this week is called Concert, so go ahead and unzip that in your folder. And let's get started. So we're going to say New File, choose Print, Letter, and we're going to call this Poster. Change this to inches and make sure it's in Landscape. Unclick Facing Pages. All of this can be fine. In Margins, we need to say 0.25. And in Bleed, we need to say 0.25. And make sure this little click thing is on so that they're locked so that all four sides are the same. Now remember, margins and bleed are going to be different whoever you're working with, but this is what the printer has told us to use. Let's go ahead and hit Create. And now that you have this set up, let's save the entire project. So File, Save As. Go put it in your Work in Progress. Go put it in your Work in Progress folder. And I'm going to call it Roberts Amy Poster. Now I think the easiest workspace for us to use is the typography workspace. So go to Window, Workspace, Typography. That has most of the things we need, but there's one more we need to add. So go to Window, Properties. And it's going to open it up right here. You can close it down just because it takes up a lot of space, and then when we need it, we'll click on it. Okay, we're ready to start. First, we need to define the swatches that we're going to use. So let's go to the Swatches panel. And just double click on the little thumbnail for the blue that is at the bottom. This is going to pop up and we're going to change this blue some. So Process is fine, CMYK. Click on the first one, which is Cyan. We need to make that 70. Click Tab and it will go to the next one. Magenta should be 80, Tab, 0% yellow, 0% black, and hit OK. Now that is our new blue. To me it looks purple, but if you're following along with the book it'll say the new blue that we created. That they mean the purple. It looks purple to me. So that's the purple. All right, now we're going to double click on the red and change that. So for this one, cyan needs to be 20%, tab, magenta 100, yellow 100, and black should be 10. And hit OK. You can see it's a little bit darker of a red. Now we need to make our own swatch from scratch. Go to the hamburger menu in swatches, click on it and say New Color Swatch. It should say Process and CMYK. For cyan, we're going to say 0%, 40% magenta, 0% yellow, and 100% black. Now you can see we have made another black. So we now have two blacks in our swatches. This is just a regular black. This is what we call super black or rich black. And if you look this up on the internet, you'll see different artists have different ideas and combinations of what they think makes a good super black. If you use this black, it's just not going to be as dark and rich as it would if you make a black that has just a little bit of changes in it. So like I said, everybody has a different idea of super black. This is what we're going to use today. We need to make one more, so click up here and say New Color Swatch. All of that is fine. Cyan should be 0, magenta should be 15, yellow 50, and black at 0. So we've made two new colors and we have adjusted two other colors. We do not need this green, so grab it by its thumbnail and throw it in the trash can. All right, we've got our colors ready to go so far. And let's go ahead and save. We need to click on the rectangle. We need to click on the rectangle tool so we can make a background. Now it's not this one, that creates frames that you could put pictures or different things in. We're going to click on this one And in our swatches panel, make sure that you're on the fill. So remember, if we click this, we're on fill, and if we click this, we're on stroke. So we're going to click on fill and give it our super black that we created. And then we're going to click on stroke and say none. So when we draw our rectangle, it should be filled with super black. Now, since you still have the rectangle tool, just go ahead and grab the corner here and pull down all the way to the bleed to make a black box. Now let's check that this is the right size and everything we need. And you can see, we can tell that it's exactly in the right place. It's 11.5 by 9, so we're good to go. Let's look at our layers panel. And you can see we just have one layer. If you open it up, it does have a rectangle in it. Let's go ahead and lock that right here so that we don't accidentally move it around or change it in any way. So we're locking our rectangle, and now we can continue on. So let's go back to the rectangle tool, and we're going to make another rectangle on top of this. So click your rectangle, and let's go back to the swatches panel. This time we want to go to our fill and say none. We want to go to our stroke and choose that new blue purple that we have. So we have no fill and purple blue stroke. Go up before you draw it. Let's change that stroke to 6 points right here. And then let's just draw a rectangle. Go all the way to the bleed. Now we need to make sure that all of our rectangles are the same. So get your selection tool, and let's make sure this is where it needs to be. So up at the top, make sure you're on the upper left-hand corner reference point. Our X point needs to be at -25. So I put mine in the right place. But our Y needs to be at 1. Our width needs to be 11.5, and our height needs to be 6.5. Okay, so it made it a little bit bigger than I had drawn it. So now that we have that, go back over into your layers, and let's turn the eyeball off of the original rectangle, which was black. So that should be what you see now. Oh, I did leave out a step that I just saw in the book. This needs to be filled with that super black. So click on that with your selection tool. Let's go back to swatches, click on fill, and make that the super black. There we go. Now the reason that worked is because I had it selected. If it didn't work for you, that just means you did not have it selected. Go make sure that you have that box selected. Okay, so now we can save and continue on. Now back over in swatches, click up on the hamburger menu, and we're going to say new gradient swatch. And it's going to pop this up. And we need to call this gradient swatch blue to red. And make sure the type is linear. So what this is saying right now, that it's going to gradiate in a line between white and black. So let's change that a little bit. We're going to click on that first stroke. We're going to click on that first little box at the bottom, which is our first gradient point. And it's asking us what stop color do we want that to be. So we could type all this in, but we've already got our swatches. So let's change this to swatches. And now we can just choose one of our swatches. So on this one, make sure you're on the first little box. We need to choose that blue purple that we made. And on the last one, we need to choose that new red that we made. And remember, we called it blue to red. So go ahead and hit OK. Because we had this selected, it put that in there. Now, if this didn't work for you, just make sure that you have your rectangle selected and click on blue to red in your fill, and it should fill it all for you. So once again, make sure this is still selected, and let's change the stroke. We're going to click on this to make sure that we're on stroke, and we're going to add that same gradient to that. Now, you can't really see that it has changed anything, so let's change this gradient a little bit. So let's go right here to this gradient panel. And just click this right here that's going to reverse it. Do you see that it flipped so that they're opposite? You can also do that by typing in 180 right here, but I just click the reverse button and it's fine. All right, so click anywhere off of this to deselect it. So now we need to make a frame. We did that last time, remember, with this frame tool right here, and we just kind of drew a frame, and then we added pictures inside of it when we were making our letterhead. This time we want to make a frame that is, if you've seen the picture, it looks like a guitar. So we're going to make a custom frame. Go to File, Place, and get this one called Guitar Outline, and uncheck Replace Selected Item, but make sure Show Import Options is there. Click Open. Here in Crop, we need to choose Art. You can see it made it just a little bit different. Sometimes artists will put the entire artboard in there, and it would put the entire thing in there. We just want the art that's in there. Go ahead and hit OK, and it's going to load it into this. So just click somewhere in the white, and it has added that to our artwork. So now let's make sure this is in the right place. Make sure your top reference point is clicked. We're going to go to 0.25 inches on X, 4.75 on Y. Okay, so that is where it wants it to be. Go ahead and save. Now what are we going to do with this? Well, we're going to turn it into a clipping mask. We're going to turn it into a clipping path. So go up to Object, Clipping Path, go up to Object, Clipping Path Options. And for type, we're going to say Detect Edges. And we're going to click on Preview. Do you see that it figured out where everything was? Now let's go back up to Object and say Object, Clipping Path, Convert Clipping Path to Frame. So what we just did was we turned this into one of these little frames. So now remember when I told you about frames last time, if you click with the selection tool, if you click once, you have the frame. If you double click, you have what's inside the frame. So you should get a little hand tool. Do you see you can move that around? So that's what's inside that frame. So make sure that you're on that frame by double clicking. You'll see the little hand tool, and just click delete to get rid of that. So now we just have a frame sitting there. So with the selection tool, make sure that you have this frame selected, and let's fill it with something. So File, Place, go find the guitar.jpg. You can turn off import options. Click Replace Selected Item. If you have that selected, it's not going to load it up into the mouse. Remember when it did it before, it loaded it into the mouse, then we clicked on it. This time it's not going to do that the same. So click Open, and it'll just put it in there for you. So hopefully that makes sense. Both ways work. That's just a different way to do it. Go ahead and save again. So with your selection tool, we now need to select this triangle again that has the gradient in the middle of it. And we need to make sure that we've got the right part of this. So go to Object, Content, Graphic. So if you see the X, you've created the right thing. So there, if you think about it, this frame had several different things in it. We're telling it we want the actual graphic. So we're going to put something else in there. Let's go File, Place again. Go find that same guitar picture that we just used a minute ago. Make sure Replace Selected Item is clicked and hit Open. So it should have replaced what we had in there, the gradient, but then it put it in there also. Let's align these a little bit better. Click off of that rectangle, and we're going to go back to this one. With the selection tool, click once. We've got the frame, double click, and now we have what's inside the frame. So we need to move what's inside the frame, but not the actual outline that we created. Make sure we're on the upper left reference point. So we need to be on -7.5 for X, and minus 4.5 for Y. So you can see they're lined up now. Okay, so click off of it and then click back just once to get the frame. Make sure you're on the frame, not what's inside the frame. And we're going to go over here to Properties. So click on that to open it. We're going to go right here to the FX button. And we need to choose Drop Shadow. This little dialog will appear. Make sure Preview is on down here so that you can see this happening. And you can see it's already added a drop shadow. All of this is fine except for right here on the color. We're going to double click that and we're going to choose that dark purple blue color that we made. And hit OK. And hit OK again so that it puts that on there. So we've just added a drop shadow to the frame. So we've added a drop shadow to this and that looks kind of cool. Now let's change the way this looks. So with your selection tool, we need to grab this rectangle again. So click once to get the frame. Double click and make sure you can see that little hand tool because that means we're on what is inside the frame. So now we need to add an effect to this frame. In your Properties panel, you can see a little FX button. So click on the FX button and choose Transparency. And we're going to change that to Multiply. Now if you didn't see it change, that's just because you did not have this Preview button on. So we've changed it to Multiply, so now you can kind of see that original gradient that we made through it. We're going to add one more thing to this. Let's go to Gradient Feather. And you can see it's putting kind of a dark other gradient over the top of it. We're going to flip that so that it looks like that. And we're going to change the angle of it to 90%. And when you're done with that, hit OK. So that's what we should be looking like right now. Let's go ahead and save. So now let's make a QR code where people can go and find out about our concert. So we could put the web address, but this is a better way. So let's make a frame for it. Click on the little frame icon and just draw a box down here in the corner. And let's tell it what this box, how big it should be and where it should be. So for X, it should be at 0.25. For Y, it should be at 7.45. Your width should be 0.8 and your height should be 0.8. All right, and let's see what it's going to filled with. And then let's make it so it's not just a box. I'm going to add a 3-point stroke and make sure it's on that purple blue that we made. And I'm going to go up here to Fill and fill it with paper. Remember that paper is white in InDesign. With that still selected, we're going to generate a QR code. So go to Object, Generate QR Code. So this code, whenever anybody scans it with their phone, it can do any of these different things. Put up some text, it can text them a message, or it can say text us here and send us to your email. You can put a business card. We're going to put a web hyperlink there. So when they scan it, they will take them to their website. And in that URL, we're going to type www.westonsummerconcertseries.com. Now before you hit OK, let's go ahead and change the color of this QR code. Click Color, and we're going to choose that rich black that we created and hit OK. So it has now generated a QR code for us, and you can try that with your phone to see if it works. Now I just tried the QR code and it's trying to go there, but it looks like it's not working this year. Let me make sure I spelled it right. Let me go to Object, Edit QR Code. I'm just going to make sure I've spelled it right. So, and I did try this code. It looks like the book publishers have not renewed the license for that URL, so it's not actually working. I'm going to try and I'll do a different one and I'll show you that it works. So I'm going to go to Object, Edit QR Code, and instead of that I'm going to put in tctc.edu. And let's see if it works now. Let me try this with my phone. Hold on. See, that works. So if you want to try just to see if your QR code is working, I won't check to make sure you did it right. It's pretty cool that it does that. So put the school website in there. Okay, go ahead and close the properties and let's go to our layers. So we've got all of this stuff in here, rectangle and QR code and all that type of stuff. So go ahead and turn your black layer back on. And let's rename this layer. And let's rename this layer. Just double click on the word layer 1 and we're going to call this graphics and hit OK. You can now lock this entire layer because we've got that the way we want it. We don't want to change it. And let's make a new layer and go ahead and turn the eyeball off so we don't see that anymore. Let's make a new layer. Click on this little plus and double click on layer 2. Let's call this text and hit OK. So grab your text tool and we're just going to click and drag a box across here. Now make sure you go within the margins because remember margins are where important things go. So only within the margins, draw a text box. So go ahead and grab your selection tool and select that text box and let's tell it where to go. So for X it should be in 0.25. For Y it should be in 0.25. The width should be 10.5 and the height should be 0.625. So now grab your text tool again and just make 2 text boxes just kind of anywhere on the screen. We're going to select that second one and let's tell it what it should be. So X for this one should be 5.75. Y should be 1.5. The width should be 5 and the height should be 4.25. Now select the third box. X for that should be 4.5. Y should be 7.9. W should be 6.25 and H should be 0.35. So we've got 3 text boxes and guess what? We're going to put text in them. So grab your text tool and just click once inside this top box. And our client has sent, so once you clicked it, you should see the little flashing thing right there. Our client has sent us the text they want us to use. So let's go to File, Place. And we have this festival text document. So click on that. Make sure Replace Selected Item is chosen and click Open. And it has put all of this in there. And it has put all of that stuff in there. Now let's grab our selection tool. And if you see right here, there is this little plus thing. And if you look down at the bottom of the screen, it's telling us we have an error. Basically, there was too much text to fit inside that text box. So if you click once on the little plus, you can see it has loaded up the rest of the text in there for us. So now just click once inside the second text. So just click once inside the second text box and it has loaded the rest of the text in there. So that's called text flow or text threads. So if you want to see that it's done that, let's go to View, Extras, Show Text Threads. And you can see it's telling us I took it from the end of this and I put it down to here. Perfect. But now the problem with this is some of this text that's up here, I want it actually to be down here. So we need to add a break so that it knows that this stuff, this celebrate the beginning, actually needs to be down here. So we need to add a frame break. So let's grab our text tool and click once right behind Festival. And you can see the little flashing sign that means you've got your text tool right there. We're going to go up to Type, Insert Break Character, Frame Break. So do you see what it did? We told it, no, I want you to break the frame here instead of where it was naturally occurring. In order to see this frame break, we can go up to View, Show Hidden Characters. It's at the very bottom. Do you see it's showing us that's a P for a paragraph, and a paragraph, all this type of stuff is in here. But now we have this extra little paragraph thing that we don't need. So with the Type tool, I'm just going to click right there where that is and hit Delete. Okay, so now we need to do the same thing at the bottom of Appetite. And we know we don't need this little paragraph thing. So instead of just putting the page break there, I want to click and drag to the right so that I select that paragraph. So now when I say add a frame break, it's just going to add it instead of that paragraph. So let's do the same thing. Type, Insert Break Character, Frame Break. Well, where did it go? That's okay. Do you see that we now have an error again? It's because it needs to be flowed into the next one. So let's get our selection tool, click on that little plus, and we need to tell it we want it to be down there. See how it flowed it down there? So what we did was we got rid of this little P, so we highlighted the P, added an insert break, added a frame break, and then we clicked here to flow down into that. So let's go ahead and change this top part. With your Type tool, you can click once somewhere in the word summer. If you triple click, it'll get the entire line. And now we can change this font. So go down to your character window. And we know we need to use ATC fonts. You should have those loaded already on your computer. So if you just type in ATC, it's going to give us all of our ATC fonts that are on our computer. For this one, we need to use Onyx. For this one, we need to use ATC Onyx Bold. And we need to choose 60 points. Now you can see that's too big for the text frame. That's okay. Right here, we want it to stay as tall as it is, but we want it to make it thinner. So that would be this one right here, which is the horizontal scale. We're going to change the horizontal scale, make it a little bit thinner, make it 80%. And now it fits in there. We also need this to be bolder, so I want you to click right here in the hamburger menu and say all caps. Now let's do the same thing down here. We're going to click once here, then click and drag and select all of this. And we'll type in, this is ATC again. We're going to choose Onyx. We're going to choose Onyx Normal. We need that to be 20 points. And then let's highlight this down here. This should be ATC. ATC Garnet Medium, and make that 24. Go ahead and save. All right, with your Type tool, let's triple click on Summer Indie Rock Festival. And we need to change kind of the way it is on, and then we need to change our paragraph settings. So click right here on Paragraph. And we're going to choose this one right here, which is Justify All Lines. You see it's kind of made, so justification means that it's going to just spread things out across the whole text box. Now in this paragraph, we need to grab right after the word machine, And we want to click this one right here, because as you know, these are paragraphs, but how much space should be between paragraphs? In a book, a lot of times there'll be an extra paragraph, and some people would just hit enter again, but that is not the way you do it in graphic design. You never want to put two paragraphs, so we won't want to see two of these little P's here. We're going to use this button right here, and we need to click on this until it's at 1.25. So you can see between all of these paragraphs, it's put 1.25. So that looks pretty good, but we want these that is a list to be a little bit different. So let's grab from Machine up to Carolina Reapers. This is kind of a little list. We want it to be different. So we're going to click down once of this to make them a little bit closer. So they should be 0.0625. So you see how the paragraph spacing is different on the list than it is on everything else. If you click away from it, you can see that looks different from everything else. So now I'm going to select these again, and let's have them indented a little bit. It needs to go to 0.3 inches. And it indented that entire paragraph over. Now the last thing that I see is, do you see that we have a kind of different amount of space between this paragraph and this one? And then here we don't have as much. So let's put put your mouse right here before the word the, and we need to change this back to 1.75 so that we have the same space between here and between here. So you've learned a lot about these, and I have done things, you can't just keep hitting enter to try to make things spaced apart. That's what people get used to doing when they're in Microsoft Word, but you cannot do that in here. Okay, so now let's go back up to layers and turn back on our graphics layer. And you can see, not a lot of contrast here. I think we might need to change this. So click once in the middle of any of those. And you can go to edit and say select all. So it just gets everything. And let's go change the text color. Make sure it's on the T to paper. So that looks a little bit better. We're going to adjust it a little bit more. Click on the text tool, triple click on the Summer Indie Rock Festival, and we need to go to our swatches, and we're going to change it to that light yellow that we made. And we're going to do the same thing with the web address. And we're going to do the same thing with the web address. So get your text tool and click right here before the word Carolina Reapers. And we're going to put a special little character there. So go to File, Place, and find this one called Music Note. Click on the Replace Selected Item and hit Open. Okay, it has put that little musical note there. It doesn't look that great so far. We're going to fix this. Now, a lot of people would just say copy, paste, and put that there. This is going to be much more helpful if you actually put it in there this way. So just believe me on this one. This is how you need to do it. So go back over here to Properties, and Transform should be up at the top. Click these little three dots to get all of the options in here. Make sure these are locked together, and we need to say 60%. Now this sometimes confuses people because it immediately goes back to 100%. That's fine. You saw it change the word. It changed. It's actually smaller. That's what it's supposed to do. It's now saying 60% is now 100%. So we're good. So this is what we call an anchored object. We've anchored it into here so it lines right up with these words. So if we made these words bigger and everything, it would not change it. So let's go and kind of change. So let's go adjust it. So go to Object, Anchored Object, Options. Make sure Preview is on so we can see what's happening. And we need to offset it just a little bit. So on the Y offset, say minus 0.05 and 0.05 inches. So you see it kind of offset it just a little bit. That looks better. Now hit OK. So if we zoom into this a little bit, Alt scroll our mouse, that's looking a lot better. Now remember, if it's looking all jagged like this, it's just because you need to go to Overprint Preview. That's actually what it's going to look like. So that always bugs me about InDesign. Anyway, we need a little bit more space here. Now, once again, this is somebody who doesn't know what they're doing with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing with graphic design might just hit space on the keyboard. No, 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 no. Let's get the type tool, and we're going to click right between the two of those. You can see our cursor is there. So we don't want to add a whole space. We just need to do kerning. So let's go back to our type. Let's go back to our character panel. And this right here is our kerning. If you change the kerning field to 200, this will be perfect. So it's not a full space, but that looks a lot better. So it's almost like we have added another character and font to this. It sees it as font. So let's select that, just click and drag to the left and say Control-C for copy. Now go down to where time is and you can paste it, Control-V. And we're going to paste it all along here on our little bullet points. And save. Double click on the hand and double click on the magnifying glass, so we're back to normal. And now we need to put some words around this edge. So make sure nothing is selected. Let's go to File, Place, and we're going to go grab this one called Text Path and just have nothing selected down here and hit Open. And click it up here where the paper would end, which is at 0, 0. You can see I put it at X0 and Y0. You can always change it if you didn't get it exactly. So that's a little path we need to make so that we can draw. It's just a guide for us to draw. So let's go get our favorite pen tool. And let's make this a 3-point with this cyan color. So now we're just going to zoom in and click on this, click right here just once, and then click about midway, click and drag until you get that looking pretty good. It's okay if you can't get it exact, we can go back and fix it later. Click and drag. Like I said, you don't have to get it exactly right now. And then I would click right here and drag and finish it. See, now mine is looking crazy. So let's get the direct selection tool. Remember, the selection tool would select the whole thing. The direct selection tool is just going to grab the paths. So now that I've got that, I can get just one of the paths and adjust them until this is fitting. Okay. So now that we've made this path, we can write on it. So if you click and hold down your mouse, you will see underneath the type tool is the Type on a Path tool. So click somewhere here near the beginning of this, and you'll see you've got a little cursor. We're going to type Weston Summer Concert Series. Now select all of that, and we're going to change the font. So the font that we need to use is ATC Garnet Normal. And we're going to make that 24 points. Now you can see we got some weirdness happening here. That's okay, we're going to fix it. Okay, so let's move it over a little bit before we worry about what's happening with that S. Go and grab your selection tool, and you see this little red line that I'm pointing at? That is the line that's telling us where it starts. So if you grab it and move it over to about right there, that's more where the book wants you to have it. So maybe a little bit up. The book says about 3/8 of an inch. I'm not sure, 3/8 of an inch. I kind of have some very strange stuff happening here. So how do we think we could fix this? How about the kerning tool again? So go back and get the your text tool, and I'm just going to click in there, and this is kerning, this one right here that says VA. So we're just going to kern those until they look a little bit better. I'm going to move my R over a tad. That looks a lot better. It still looks weird, but it looks better. Now that we have that drawn, we don't need this guide anymore. So with the selection tool, grab the white part that's behind it and just hit delete. Now with the selection tool, select what we just made and turn this down to none. So we just have that. And let's change the color of it. So go to your swatches, make sure that it's on the type, and we're going to make it that pale yellow that we made. Very nice. Go ahead and save. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn off these little hidden characters because they're driving me crazy. So type, hide hidden characters. Yeah, that's looking better. And of course you can go to View, Overprint, Preview to kind of see it without all of that stuff on it. So that's looking like the book wants. Go back to regular. Okay, so we already have this one saved. So let's say File Saved, just to make sure you've got it saved. But now we need to have two versions of this. This one is the size of a piece of paper, but we need to make one that's a size of a postcard. So let's go File, Save As, because we already have one that's saved that's called Poster. Now we're going to make one that's called Postcard. So we're going to call it Roberts, Amy, Postcard. So you can have two files, one that is the poster and one that is the postcard. And see that it says postcard up here. So this is the new one that we're dealing with. What's great about InDesign is it can take this and change the size of it and adjust everything for us. So we're going to go to File, Adjust Layout. So with this, we need to make sure the orientation is on landscape, but our width needs to be 7 inches and our height needs to be 5. So we're making it a lot smaller. Now, if we were to do this a different way, it just would cut off everything we've done. But this is a great feature that it has. It can adjust it all for us. So we're going to change our margins a little bit. Make sure these are joined together, and we're going to change them to 1.25. And we're going to change our bleed to 1.25. Make sure you have this adjust font size and that adjust locked content is on. And let's hit OK. It now just resized that completely and fixed everything for us. Now we need to mess with it a little bit because there's some things that could be better. So it did a pretty good job, but you can see it's got some cut off stuff. Do you see we have an error? So with your selection tool, if you grab this and move your Y until it's about 7, and you can watch it up there. Just kind of have, if you line it up with the R and rock, you should be good. When you let go, now we have everything all in there and we're back to normal. So it did a pretty good job of fixing it for us, but it's not perfect, so you always have to check. Now, one of the things that happened here is, remember this was on justification. It's kind of left some big, huge spaces between here because it was on justified. So I want to adjust that some. Let's get our regular type tool and triple click on this so that we have the Summer Indie Rock Festival. Let's go back to paragraph. Remember, we left it on justify all lines. So go up to the hamburger menu and go to justification. So we're like, it's fine that it's justified, but really this is too much space. So you can change this so that it's not quite as bad. So on maximum letter spacing maximum, we need to say 20% is as much as I want you to do between letters. And then maximum glyph scaling, the most you can do is 150. And if I click on preview, you can see the changes it's making. See, that looks a lot more, that looks a lot more pleasing to the eye. Okay, let's hit OK. We need to adjust this main picture a little bit. So let's get our selection tool and go to your layers and unlock this graphics panel and unlock the graphics layer. So click once and then double click so that we are in the thing that's on the inside here. And let's go to properties right here and make sure this 3 dots is open so we have all of our options here open. So mine's at 62. We need to change this to 63. It's just a little bit off, no big deal. So it's on 63 proportionally. And then we need to check this to make sure this is right. So once again, click on that once, double click to get the thing that's inside of it. And let's go back to the properties. Mine is at 59, but it needs to be at 63. And look, they're lining up again. Perfect. Okay, so we are kind of done with these, but now we need to output them. Now we need to output them the way that most printers want, which is a PDF. So we have this one called Postcard. Let's go ahead and leave that one open, and let's open up the other one we did. So if you say open, go find your work in progress, concert. There is my poster. So I already have Postcard open. I need to open up Poster. So now I have both of my files. So I need to export both of these files. And just make sure you don't, confuse them. So we're going to say File Export. And we do want to put this in our Work in Progress folder. And you can leave it named, that's fine, Roberts Amy Poster, but this time it's going to be a PDF. It should pop up as PDF. If not, make sure you've got PDF Print, not PDF Interactive. Go ahead and hit Save. And that's going to pop up this. So we need to choose High Quality Print. Go down to compression and kind of look at all of these choices that it's given you. Now, different printers are going to tell you different things that they want. For marks and bleeds, so different printers are going to tell you different things that they want, but notice that the 300 DPI that we've talked about and everything is on here. So all of this is fine. Let's go to marks and bleeds. And we need to make sure the offset is at 0.25. Now in the compatibility, we're going to choose 1.3. Now that's the type of thing that the printer would tell you. So I need Acrobat 1.3. Go down to Advanced. And we need to go High Resolution right here. And just hit Export. It's going to give you that. So that's fine. Just hit OK. And it has now saved all of that. Let's go through the same thing for your postcard. So let's go ahead and close this one so we don't get confused. Yes. So we're going to say File, Export. That's fine. Call it Postcard. High Quality Print. Acrobat 1.3. Marks and bleeds. It remembers everything, so it should be fine. I'm just checking. High resolution. We're fine. We're ready to go. Okay, so now I have 2 PDFs that I can upload to Blackboard for my assignment. We're done.